Hey, what's up, guys? Patrick Sebastien here, performance coach for golf. So I was talking to someone today and they asked me, how did you get into golf? So if you don't know my story, I was a martial arts coach for 20 years. I worked as a personal trainer. I ended up getting into performance coaching later on, focusing on breath training and meditation. I've done tons of research on flow states and peak performance states and human performance. And then a few years ago, I decided, you know what? I want to get into the golf space. I want to coach golfers. I want to work with golfers because I became really passionate about the game, but especially the performance part of the game. But like all things, there's a start to it. So someone asked me, how did you get started in this? Why did you think that you could actually make a difference in the golf space? And that actually goes back a few years. So in 2019, I moved to Los Angeles with my family, and I had not touched a golf club in 10 years. And so moving to LA, knowing that I could play 12 months a year coming from the East Coast, I was like, okay, first I'll be able to play 12 months a year. That's kind of cool. And I also knew that I needed something to connect with people. We didn't know anyone out there. So I was like, maybe it's a way to meet some people. But again, I had not touched a club. In fact, I didn't have clubs. I didn't even have golf clubs at that point. So I went on eBay and I ordered an old set of irons, an old driver, a couple old woods, some old wedges, and an old putter. I think the whole set cost me about $200. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just gonna start going to the driving range and we'll see what happens. So I started going to the range, and if you think golf is like riding a bike, it's not. All right, after 10 years, it took me a while to finally start making some decent contact. And it was weird because if you saw me hitting the ball, you would think, oh, this guy has a decent swing. But I could not get the ball to go where I needed it to go. So I kind of had to start over a little bit and reteach myself the basics. But eventually I got to a point where I started making decent contact and I felt, you know what? Okay, I think I'm at a point now where I can get back onto the golf course. So I started going to a local golf course. First few rounds were brutal. I think I barely broke 100. Now, in the past, I had a couple seasons where I got pretty decent, where I could shoot in the low 80s. So I knew I had that in me. I had that experience to draw on. It's not like I was brand new to golf. I did know how to play the game. It just hadn't been a while. But slowly, as you know, you start investing the time, and I started going to the range at least twice a week, and I started getting onto the golf course at least once a week. And as my technique got better, the scores started to come down. But then it got to a point where it felt like my technique is improving, but my scores are not. And I remember there was this one round where I went out to play. I played with some decent players, and I felt like I hit the ball really well. I was like, wow, my game's really coming together. But then I look at my scorecard and I'm like, wait, it's the same score that I'm always playing. This was always in the low 80s. I was always shooting. It felt like I was always playing 84. Like no matter what I did, good round, bad round, good front nine, good back nine, didn't matter. It always totaled up to 84 or 83 or 85, but it always hovered around 84. And it was really frustrating because I was like, I feel like I played a lot better than that, and yet same score that I always get. So then I went home that day and I took my scorecard while it was super fresh in my mind, and I went hole by hole, shot by shot. And my goal was to figure out what went wrong. If I feel like I just played this amazing round of golf and yet my score is the same as usual, something obviously went wrong. And I was able to count at least 6 shots that were due to mental mistakes. Either I played too quickly, I had the wrong club, or I just felt rushed, or I didn't take time to line up my putt properly. Like, these were mistakes that were super easily avoidable. So I was like, okay, 6, that's a lot, right? Because 84, well, maybe that's 80, maybe that's 79. If I can maybe take 4 or 5 of those 6 shots, take my time, make better decisions, maybe I get to break 80, maybe I get to play a better score. So I thought, okay, so if the goal is to make less mental mistakes, how can I do that? So then I thought, okay, well, I'm a performance coach. I've worked with athletes. I have tools at my disposal like breathing and meditation. And I was like, okay, now how do I integrate that into my golf game? And the first thing I thought of, and this was a technique that I used to teach fighters, which was the power of a single breath. So I knew that with one single breath, using some specific breathing techniques, I could slow things down and get into a really focused state. It's like, okay, well, that sounds like it could really help with my golf game. So next day I went to the driving range and I started experimenting with this idea of introducing a single breath before I hit the ball. So I would stand behind the ball, and I didn't know much about, golf course strategy. I didn't really understand the importance of trajectories. Like, I'm still relatively new to the game at this point. I just knew that I had to slow things down and make better decisions on the golf course. So I started experimenting with this idea of taking a long, deep breath in, slow, deep breath out, and then stepping up to the ball and hitting my shot. So I practiced that for a couple sessions on the range, hit it out onto the golf course, and started to integrate that into my game. Now, it didn't catch on right away because when you're playing with other people and you're trying some new things, it's not always that easy, and I get that, especially I work with a lot of students now and I try to integrate these new pre-shot routines for them, and they're like, oh, I really tried, but there's a couple holes where I forgot. I'm like, yeah, you'll forget sometimes. But then as long as you catch yourself, you bring yourself back to your routine. So that's what I did. And it took about 2 or 3 rounds, and then there was one round where everything just started to slow down, and I actually broke 80. I shot 79 that day. And I remember looking at my scorecard and thinking, well, there it is. And I felt it. I felt like I was taking more time to plan my shot. I was making less mental mistakes. There were a few times where I was like, hey, I don't have the right club in my hand. Or hey, this isn't the right shot to play. So I gave myself a buffer. And I think the way I like to explain that single breath is a buffer between when you get to the ball and when you hit your shot. Because for a lot of us, what happens is things speed up. Especially if you just hit a bad shot or if you're stressed, things are going to start speeding up. So having that single breath can create the buffer that you need in order to make the right decision and try to hit the shot that you're trying to hit. All right. Now, once I started getting those results, that's when the coach was like, wait a minute, if this is working for me, then it can probably work for other people. So as we do, I created a video, posted it on Instagram. And I started posting a few different videos and just breath training videos and how I was integrating these into my golf game. And I started to talk to more and more people about it. And then I decided, you know what? I want to work with a pro golfer. Because obviously when we're talking about performance coaching, mental training, not everybody's going to get into that. I get that part. So I was like, I want to work with a pro golfer. So I just watched this YouTube video about the Korn Ferry Tour and how much those guys struggle when they're missing cuts. If you don't know about the Korn Ferry Tour or any tour below the PGA Tour, a lot of those guys and girls are struggling. And the reason is, if they're not making cuts, they're not getting paid. And not only are they not getting paid, they're losing money because they have to pay for everything. They pay for travel, they pay for food, they pay for practice, they pay their coaches, they pay their equipment. Like a lot of these guys can spend a couple $1,000s just to show up and play in a tournament. And if they miss the cut, well, they're out $2,000 or $3,000 or whatever it costs them. So I was like, okay, there must be 1 or 2 of those players that are desperate enough to give a coach like me a chance. Someone who has no history in the golf business, never worked with golfers before. I'm coming in with something kind of different with breath training and focus training and mental training, but let's see what happens. So I went to the Korn Ferry Tour. I went to the top 50 players at that time on the Korn Ferry Tour. And I started marking down all the ones that had 2 or 3 missed cuts in the last few tournaments. Then I found them on Instagram, followed them all, and sent them each a message. One guy got back to me. His name was JT Griffin. He's no longer on tour. He's actually caddying now on the PGA Tour, which is kind of cool. And I sent him a message, and he got back to me maybe a month later. Because he's like, sorry, I just saw this. Because you know how on Instagram, when you send a message, sometimes it goes into that other folder. So he's like, I just saw this. But in fact, this was on a Wednesday. He's like, I have a tee time at 9:06 tomorrow morning. If you have some time today, I'd love to learn more about what you're offering. I was like, okay, let's try. So we did this 1-hour session. I taught him some breathing techniques. This was all done virtually by video. Taught him some breathing techniques, taught him about my pre-shot ritual, told him a little bit about my philosophy and what I was thinking. He's like, all right, I'll give it a try. So he went out. Now, obviously, he had never practiced any of this. He didn't really have time to work on it. He had to integrate it right away. It was not a huge success. I think he missed the cut that weekend, but he came close. He came really close, but it was close enough that he felt like, you know what? I think I want to learn more about this. So we started working together. And though it wasn't the huge success story that I would have liked, he actually retired after that season because he had a lot going on outside of the golf world that he had to deal with, which was part of the reason why he wasn't performing at his best on the golf course. But at the end of that season, he ended up retiring. But for me, it was a huge motivation to get into the golf business because I loved it. I loved everything I learned about the pro game. Like if you've been playing golf your whole life, you don't realize how different it is at the pro level. It's a completely different game. It's the same game. We have the same goals, but first of all, the level of performance is way beyond what us mere mortals are capable of. But it's the pressure, the amount of pressure that some of these players have to deal with every single week, how extremely competitive it is at that level. Like what I learned is, because I asked them some questions, and these are some of the lessons that I learned from coaching a Korn Ferry Tour player, which might be helpful to some people out there. So one of the first things I asked him was, what's the difference between someone who's struggling on a pro tour like PGA Tour Americas, Korn Ferry Tour, or on the PGA Tour, and those that are playing well? What's the main difference? He's like, the main difference is that every single one of us can go low. We can all shoot 64, 65. The difference is who can do it when it matters. Who can do it when it's a Sunday afternoon? Who can do it on a Friday when you need to make the cut? That's the difference. And who sinks the most putts. That's one thing that I took away from that is we're all great at ball striking. We can all hit it far. We can all be precise with our irons. We can all hit good wedges. But who sinks the most putts is most likely the one who's going to do well in the tournament. So sinking putts in short game is a massive priority. So that was another lesson that I learned. One, all tour pro players are really, really elite golfers. And that's something we forget. We see them struggling and we're like, he's not that good. No, he's extremely good, or she's extremely good. These are elite level golfers who are competing against other elite level golfers. So though what we see is a player who's missing cuts, a player who struggles with their nerves, a player who struggles to perform, but remember that these are the best of the best, and they happen to be competing against the best of the best. So it's 100% mental, because technically they're all extremely strong. Physically, yeah, maybe some are dealing with injuries, but for the most part, they all have the physical ability to hit that golf ball. So the main difference is this. And that's when I knew that I could make a difference in the sport. Because I was like, with everything I know about human performance, about flow states, about getting in the zone, about breath training, stress management, peak performance, and even physical training, I was like, I could really make a difference in this sport. So that's how I got started. And I got really lucky in the last couple of years to have found my business partner in Steve Foisy, who's one of the top instructors in Canada. So he understood what I could bring to the game. And so together we've been able to come together and create this amazing coaching program. But if it wasn't for that one Korn Ferry Tour player who gave me a chance, I don't know that I'd be here right now. So thank you, JT Griffin, for giving me that chance. I really appreciate it. I've learned so much since then. I've had a chance to work with an LPGA Tour player, had the chance to work with some elite junior golfers this year, and I just keep working with golfers of all different levels. But more and more and more, I'm seeing that mental training and physical training and performance coaching are so important, especially as we climb that golfing ladder, because the higher you go, the more elite you get, the more it's about the mind and way less about the technical and physical abilities that you have. So that's how a Korn Ferry Tour player made me realize that I have a lot to bring to this game and that I could make a significant difference for players of all levels, but especially players that are serious about performance and who really want to see if they can unlock their ultimate potential. So that's it for now. Have an amazing day. Peace.